Every woman deserves to feel vibrant, safe, loved, and feel her power. The Woman's Vibrancy Code podcast is here for a potent use of your time. We will cover energy, hormones, and libido with episodes that also dive into entrepreneurship, money mindset, feminine power, and much, much more. Introducing Maraya Brown, Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, and entrepreneur.
Hello to all of you spectacular people out there. This is a fun podcast that I'm repurposing. So I had the esteemed privilege of interviewing Alison Armstrong. For those of you that don't know who she is, for decades, she's been studying the male and female brain. Check her out on Audible, her workshops, her books, they're all spectacular. And I was a bit starstruck because listening to Celebrating Partnership in Audible, which is one of her recorded workshops, literally transformed my marriage. So if you are looking to better understand how you think and act and be, whether you are a male-bodied individual or female-bodied individual, I highly encourage that you listen into this recorded and repurposed interview, and you're likely going to want to take notes. So grab your pen and paper, grab your hot cup of adaptogen elixir, and let's go. I have with me today Alison Armstrong, which for me, I feel starstruck. Honestly, truly, Alison, you have changed my life. You changed my marriage around, and I'm so grateful for the work that you do. So let me tell you a little bit about Alison. Alison's exploration of human behavior began in 1991 with her decision to study men, to find out how I was bringing out the worst in them, she says, and hopefully how to bring out the best. Her success in understanding men naturally led to studying women's behavior and making vital connections between the two. Armstrong distinguishes human instincts that compel both men and women to behave in ways that contradict and undermine our own purposes, goals, values, needs, and relationships. She offers partnership-based alternatives, giving millions of people access to more fulfilling lives, loving relationships, stronger families, and productive organizations. Armstrong is a sought-after speaker and thought leader amongst people with the desire to live empowered lives. Alison's philosophy and approach is frequently referenced and taught by other authors, speakers, business consultants, and therapists. So, Alison, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts around how we can best understand ourselves and be supportive in community when we're surrounded by other women.
Oh boy, there's a lot of ways I can answer that question. Can I be global and then bring it down to just something practical?
Absolutely.
Okay. So yes, I started out very much understanding men for the purposes of heterosexual romantic relationships. Then immediately gay men wanted to be in our workshops. And then understanding men, studying men led to studying women, right? And because what men were saying about women was mystifying to me. It's as if we were talking about two different people. And that had me go into investigating women and how to translate women into the man world, right? So all these things I was working on. But what it came down to, the more that I sought to empower women, was really discovering how much we're compelled by instinct, and which literally means when we perceive a threat or an opportunity, we have a biological response, and it impels our action. We're trying to kill it. We're trying to escape it. We're trying to stay really still and maybe it'll pass us by. So we have fight, flight, and freeze responses to the perception of a threat or an opportunity. And most people think an opportunity would cause a different response, but it doesn't, because from the point of view of survival, an opportunity quickly becomes a threat, right? We might not be sufficient to it. We might not be good enough. We might fail in the process. We might waste resources and then die, right? So all these things having to do with survival. And unfortunately, besides having opposing instincts with men, like literally opposite instincts. The things we do antagonize them. They have them feel threatened, and the things that they do have us feel threatened. So we're like pinball machines going off at each other. So many of our instincts pit us against other women. And same thing for men. It'll pit men against men. But for us, there's like this switch that happens, right? So there's a desire to bond and be close and be connected and share and do things together and be together. And we survive like a herd, very much we actually are a herd. We're like a herd of mares, and we act a lot. I was telling you about feeding my horses, right? So I've been using horses to study human behavior, and we behave a lot like a herd of mares. So all the concerned with status, all the who's going to get the other person to move, to do what they want, to do what they say. So there's a lot of control and domination and status. And there's even this phenomenon of the women are the ones who vote on whether or not another woman is good enough for a man in their life. Good enough for their son, good enough for their ex-husband, good enough for their brother, good enough for their father, good enough for their best guy friend. There's this judgment, this huge judgment by women about other women and their right to date and mate and pair with the men in their life. And so much of what women are doing, both with men and women, is contorting ourselves to be pleasing, to avoid being displeasing, to avoid being ostracized, which is terrifying at just the core level, to be ostracized, to be disliked. And basically, years ago, I looked up the definition of competition, and and I looked up survival, and survive means to outlive another. That's what survive means. Survival is inherently competitive. There has to be a loser by definition. And so much of how women are with each other, when survival depends on each other, we behave one way. And then when survival depends on something else, boom, instinctually, we just turn against each other so quickly. We will throw another woman under the bus.
No. Can we stop devolution somehow?
No. Well, how come I'm bringing it up? Is because awareness, right? A moment of awareness is your first chance to choose, your first chance to go from the limbic part of the brain up until the cerebral cortex, and then in the prefrontal cortex, executive override. So the impulse is to betray, the overhead is, no, I'm a woman of honor. I'm going to do the right thing no matter how I feel. I don't care how hurt I am by her. I don't care how pissed off I am by her. I don't care how threatened I am by her. I'm going to do what's right. Mm-hmm. And we can do that. But oh my gosh, if we're not even aware of the limbic impulse, we have no chance of overriding it. And if we're trying to pretend we don't have them, we can't override them. If we think we're bigger and better and more transformed than that, we can't override them. If we're ashamed for the limbic impulses, we can't override them. Like we actually have to, a dear friend of mine, Dr. Pete Farmer, he would say, until we embrace our ordinary, until we literally embrace being human, we're not going to be able to transcend it. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be able to have honor, to be honorable, to do the right thing, no matter how we feel, to do the right thing, no matter how we think, no matter how afraid we are, to still do the right thing. Yeah. And that's so much of what my work is about. And it began with men. It began with being afraid of men, which causes us to emasculate them, to try to disempower them because we're afraid of their power. We're afraid of their strength, right? Mm. But it even includes, we disempower women, we disempower ourselves. All the ways that we emasculate men, we emasculate ourselves and each other. Mm-hmm.
What also makes me think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking like a woman during her chapter of PMS, or if she's had a night of no sleep and she's postpartum, or a really stressful year where anxiety has been high. I imagine in all of those scenarios, the override must become even more difficult, and the acknowledgement of embracing our ordinary. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could all just walk around with like, I'm the week before my menstrual cycle right now. If we're interacting differently with those around us. I mean, I'm imagining it probably changes just based on where we are in our cycle and where we are in our lives.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Luann Brizendine has done brilliant work on this, and even showing that the role of our hormones in our ability to handle criticism, and that at certain stages in our cycle, we have no protection against criticism. And at other stages, we do have protection. I mean, it's at the cellular level being protected by hormones. And so, yeah, in that period right before our period, we have no shielding. And so like the slightest like sneer or slight or tone can just have us we're literally responding to terror. And some people respond to terror with a fight response, and you don't know that what they are is terrified because they're coming at you so hard and fast and strong, but they're afraid. Their reaction is fight. I'm a fighter. And that's my first response, is fight. But if we can be aware of this, like when I became aware that I'm fight, freeze, flight, when I feel my engine revving to fight, I'm like, oh, wait, this is a perception of a threat. What is the threat here?
There's like no wildebeest running after me.
Yes. Who's the tiger? Where's the tiger? Who's the tiger? So that's what I mean by starting global, right? So if we can just understand, we have human instincts, just like your dog has instincts, your cat has instincts, birds, wolves, instincts rule the planet. Trees respond instinctually, right? You know, pine trees drop their needles to poison the ground beneath them so nothing can grow there and compete for the nutrients, right? Plants are vicious.
Those darn plants.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about incorporating men too. So I'm thinking this whole idea of, like, I love what you said about women saying that hurt my feelings versus men saying I feel crushed. And for those of us that are in relationships, I mean, we're all in relationships with men in some way, whether we're working with them or we have sons or we have male husbands or partners, whatever. Can you help us understand this difference and how do we not feel so darn frustrated with the men in our lives when we're like, you were late and I feel disrespected and disregarded and you hurt my feelings. It's my story. You're late again. You don't respect me.
Yeah. Oh boy, you just wanted a small topic. I see.
Well, and I have a lot of questions, so I'm just rolling with it.
Just a little one, just the monster. We got to back it up a little bit, right? So most women are certain, so certain that we don't even examine it, we don't even talk about it. It's just true that if a man feels the right way about you, he will treat you the right way. So we interpret everything they do as a reflection of how they feel about us. So if they do something that we would never do to someone we loved, they don't love us. That we would never do to someone we respected, they don't respect us. We never do to someone we cared about, they don't care about us. So we're certain that their feelings drive their actions, and if we can make them feel right, they'll act right. Which is what has us do a whole array of things, from trying to change ourselves to be what will make them feel right, to trying to get them to go to therapy so they can straighten out their messed up feelings. Right?
Yeah.
To trying to find out from Alison Armstrong, how do I say this so that it gets him to do that, right? So we think if we just have the right words to say, then he'll feel the right way and he'll do the right thing. We have it messed up from the very beginning. So much of what men do has nothing to do with how they feel about a woman. Nothing to do. with how they feel about him. And you know this from, perhaps reading the Queen's Code or Keys of the Kingdom or listening to The Amazing Development of Men, or, we have all kinds of things on audio, which are normally treated as books, but I've only actually published 3 books. And so there are so many things that a man does because his instincts compel him to do that. And he considers himself to be honorable when he does the right thing, no matter how he feels, including does the right thing no matter how much he loves her, right? So if the right thing to do is to stay at work and get that report done that his boss just sprung on him and the whole team is depending upon it, including his raise and his promotion and his ability to provide for his family, and his wife is going to be so upset that he's missing their anniversary dinner, he can't cave to her being upset, and he can't cave to how much he cares about her. He has to do the right thing. Yeah. So it isn't if he felt right about her, he would have acted differently. He does feel right about her, and he's tortured by this is the right way to act. And
it's not the right decision. From a woman's perspective.
Well, sometimes we're missing the bigger picture.
Right.
If you loved me, you would have blown all those people off and all those things off. And you would have taken your chances just so my feelings wouldn't be hurt.
Right.
He's going to be looking from protecting, right? If you look at instincts in order, procreate, then protect, then provide. So you create something, then you protect something, you protect that thing, and then you can provide it. So you create a family, your job is to protect that family and provide for that family. So how do you protect and provide for your family? You do whatever your job takes.
Right.
You do whatever it takes to keep a roof over their head. Even if your wife is just pissed at you for working so hard and so late.
Right.
That's still the right thing to do. And you wish she wasn't mad, but there's nothing you can do about it, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And they wonder why we take so many things personally that aren't, or they wonder why we don't see them doing that and appreciate it. Honey, thank you. I know you wanted to be with me. I know you wanted to celebrate our anniversary. Thank you for doing what you needed to do to keep this roof over our head and keep our children in ice skating lessons and summer camp. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can we celebrate our anniversary this weekend?
Right.
That to him would be like, I have the best partner in the world. She gets me. Right. She gets me. And so him being crushed, right? He's crushed. And they usually don't say I feel crushed. They usually say I am crushed or I was crushed.
Mm.
So he gets crushed by her interpretation, which is so far from the truth. That is what caused her to have hurt feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a double whammy on.
Right. It's like, it reminds me when you were talking about, a woman going out to gather and maybe she sees a blueberry bush and she's going to check back behind and underneath, like what's right now. And your example of if you want to hide something for a man in the pantry, just put it back behind and he won't see it. But it's like, well, can I just make him see it?
No, you can't make him see it. You can't make him see it. Their instinct is there's a deer, shoot it. So they open the pantry, there's a can of beans, eat it. Or they open up the pantry and the whole row is something they don't like. There's nothing in the pantry to eat. I'll go on for dinner. I'll order in, right?
It's so fascinating.
The hunting mind versus the gathering mind. And then you have a woman in hunting mode and the whole thing blows up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's a lot of people saying they're non-binary and I don't associate with male or female. And I really associate with being a woman, and I can see there's plenty of times where I'm very masculine too. Do you have any thoughts around that conversation?
So the modern understanding of women, we present women with this ability to shift from hunting mode to gathering mode, often involuntarily, and it completely alters our perception, how we process information, how we relate to speaking and listening and feelings. I mean, this is why men call us a moving target, because something they learn works with us only works part of the time. And so understanding women is a lot about having us understand what causes us to be committed and focused and screening out everything that doesn't have to do with productivity. And we're not nice, right? Unless we think that makes us more productive, versus when we're very open and connected and overwhelmed by the amount of information we receive. And what switches us, and how to empower ourselves, and how to honor ourselves, like not let ourselves be criticized for something that just has to do with being female, which includes this ability to switch very quickly. If you look at it as a spectrum, right? So women can look at how much time do they spend in a open to options and alternatives and possibilities and very connective state of mind, what we call gathering mode, versus how much time they spend in hunting mode, committed, right? Committed, focused, getting things done. Productivity is what has them feel safe on the gathering, and connectivity makes them feel safe. And then there's kind of a hell in between where where we're committed to something, but not enough committed to be focused. So we don't have the peace of being focused, and we don't have the peace of being uncommitted. Uncommitted is a wonderful way to be. Just hanging out, puttering around, doing whatever we feel like. It's lovely, right? Focused is also an awesome way to be. Just the world goes quiet and all that exists is that thing that you're up to. And we can tap into how most men are. They're very much at peace when they're focused, when they're getting things done. So doing one of the others is awesome. Spending time in between in both, that's a kind of hell. Spending, like, how much of your life do you want to spend? How much of your weekend do you want to spend getting things done versus how much of your weekend do you want to spend just open to whatever could happen? Once we know they're two completely different states of mind that affect everything, we can start to say, okay, this is what I want to be focused on. And then I don't want anything else in my schedule whenever I feel like. And we can also do this thing that's really amazing. This is one of the best tricks. Have a goal, right? Have a goal you're committed to, you're focused on. It's something you want to accomplish. Think about, okay, how long will it take to get that done? 2 years. It'll take me 2 years to get that done. Okay, I'm going to plan to take 5 years.
Okay, I'm curious.
Well, now you have a goal and you can putter getting it done. You have all the time in the world. You have 5 years to get something done that you think will only take 2 years. So instead of doing everything as soon as you can, you space it out because you want more free time to hang out, to play, to be open. So, I mean, there's actually a chapter. It's one of the sessions in Understanding Women called It's All About Time.
Yeah.
So however much time we think we have determines our mode. If someone says we're leaving in 10 minutes, boom, we think a completely different way. Honey, when are you going to be ready to go to the party? Oh, I don't know, an hour? And he or she is like, okay, let's give her 2 hours. And then she's like, we're doing these earrings and these earrings. And she gets to just be about beauty and play and anticipation instead of, where's that? Where is it? I got to put it on.
Right. When there's scarcity of time, it changes.
Yeah, it's all about time. I'm doing a free webinar starting Thursday night, 3 sessions called Hope versus Hopeless. Time has everything to do with us feeling hopeful or hopeless. When we don't leave ourselves enough time, we become hopeless. You give yourself plenty of time for something. You're very hopeful. You're very upbeat.
Right.
Yes, which
not feeling pressured.
Yes.
And so, okay, so you mentioned Understanding Women a few times. So once again, you can just go to AlisonArmstrong.com, click on Get Started, Finding Understanding Women, and then say you were referred by Beyond the Red Tent and go find that. I want to talk a little bit about sex. Talk about sex.
Sex.
So I love your whole
if you
thing.
have plenty of time. It's more fun when you have plenty of time.
Right. And sometimes it's fun when you don't have plenty of time too. Okay, this whole
that
thing
can be fun too. Very focused.
kind of like two questions. First is your concepts around sex in the context of providing versus wanting, I find really fascinating. And can you touch on that and add in, what about the women that are postmenopausal and having vaginal dryness and vaginal pain? What about the women that are postpartum and feeling overtouched? And are there caveats to that chapter in a woman's life? So it's kind of a two-part question.
Interesting. I never heard it said that way. Postpartum and they're overtouched. Yeah, there's about 6 weeks leeway postpartum where they've shown that a man's hormones are affected and reduce his sex drive for that amount of time, but then it's over. So postpartum lasts longer. Not so fun. Well, I would say, first of all, any sense that a woman has of being taken from involuntarily, not good. So whatever we can do about that. And one of the things we talk about in Understanding Women is the importance of oxytocin, and that our lifestyles used to support the building of oxytocin, but they hardly do anymore. First of all, if we're in get her done mode, we're just producing clean dishes and cookies and a clean house or a painting, right? Or if we're, instead of in gathering mode, where we slow down and we're contemplative and we notice details and we enjoy beauty, that's how we build oxytocin. And oxytocin, if you don't have enough oxytocin, a woman will dread sex. Like just dread it. Oxytocin is that sounds like fun hormone. Oxytocin is also the hormone that gives us the ability to have orgasms. And we spend a boatload of oxytocin when we have orgasms. And so we actually have to plan on rebuilding. We have to plan on getting it back or we'll get depressed. So it's something I spend a lot of time on in the Understanding Women course for men and women, because men can support women in building oxytocin. And like, honey, you cook. Do you want me to do the dishes or do you want to save them till morning? Because slowly hand washing dishes rebuilds oxytocin. A good thing to do if he now wants to make love to her. How about we just leave this and I'll do them in the morning or you can do them in the morning? Your choice. Yeah, it's really important to get supported. Since I'm all about choice, and since our lifestyles tend to not build hormones or support hormones or keep us from spending them like crazy, like after menopause, even before menopause, half of our testosterone comes from the ovum. And the ovum are disappearing at a phenomenal rate from birth and even before birth. And so that energy, drive, ambition, go, 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 and sex drive has everything to do with testosterone. And by the time we're menopausal, it's gone. The ovum are gone. And all we're left is the half of our testosterone that's produced by the adrenal glands. But there's a problem. My doctor taught me about this. It's called the Progelian steal. And this is where attitude has everything to do with our sense of well-being. There's a gland attached to the adrenal gland that if our perception of what's happening in our lives is that it's a threat, right? If we're stressed about it, then the Progelian gland, instead of the adrenal gland producing testosterone, the Progelian gland takes over and produces cortisol instead of testosterone. So instead of ambition, we have hunger and exhaustion and apple bellies. But we actually have a choice. if we notice the tension in our bodies that tells us we're perceiving a threat, we can override. We can, wait a second, what's a threat? I don't have enough time. Oh, I'll just call them and tell them I'm going to be late. So how we perceive something affects how our bodies respond, and then how our bodies respond affects how we perceive things.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually need to create a partnership with our own instincts and our own hormones. And honestly, the thing that I did about it was when I found out that testosterone is responsible for short-term memory, and I was terrified of what was happening with my short-term memory, I started bioidentical hormones replacement therapy. So testosterone, progesterone, estradiol. I started that probably, 4-5 years ago. And when I got them tested, my hormones tested, my doctor was actually, she said, she's one of my graduates, and she said, the fact that you're still functioning is a testimonial to you practicing what you preach. Because I paid so much attention to creating that resilience, right? But my hormones were crud. Another thing I just would say about it is that our hormones are dramatically affected by the loss of the ovum by the time we're in our early 30s. So it's not unusual for a 35-year-old woman to benefit from help in the area of testosterone replacement. Mm-hmm. Or completely change your lifestyle so you build more of your own.
Right. I'm thinking about an interview that I watched with John Gray, and his, and I think you and John Gray might have kind of different ideas. So that's kind of why I'm bringing it up. No, I mean, something
I'm aware of. He's the one who taught me about building and spending of testosterone. And then I went and looked into oxytocin.
Okay. So I love what he has to say about behaviors that men and women can do more of that will actually impact. So would you talk a little bit about behaviors that women could do more or less of that might actually impact increasing their testosterone levels if they maybe don't want to take exogenous bioidentical hormones?
Rest is how you build testosterone. Rest is how men build testosterone. This is why the morning soldier at attention, because if we got a good night's sleep, he built testosterone and it shows up in his penis. So you want to talk about sex. So rest. Before I ever knew anything about this, I called it sit on the golden eggs. Instead of every bit of energy that you have immediately spending it on something, just sit on it. Mm-hmm. Just have energy instead of spending energy. Mm-hmm. We're terrible at it because diffuse awareness has all these things in our environment calling us to jump up and do them. But sleeping more, finding out how much sleep you need and when. I am so much into anything that teaches us to understand ourselves better and honor ourselves more efficiently. And Bruce is spelled Breus, so Bruce like Zeus. Mm-hmm. And he has a set of distinctions called chronotypes, and they're tied to our DNA. So there's, I forget which one it is, in a particular chromosome, there's 4 different possibilities. And those 4 different possibilities literally determine the time of day that our hormones are naturally released.
Yeah.
So what causes us to be sleepy, what causes us to be awake, what causes us to be the most receptive and get the best benefit from sex, the best times for us to eat and to move our bodies. And it's fascinating work. Mm-hmm. And it changed my life. My husband discovered it and he apologized to me so many times. It was very sweet because he was the chronotype called lion, and which naturally wakes up bright and early before the sun's up, get at it, right? Get her done, knock it out, often wakes up hungry, and by 8 o'clock is incapable of socializing. And any conversation after 8 o'clock went horribly. And it took like 20 years of marriage to just figure that out and just avoid it, right? Mm-hmm. But then I read The Power of When, and it's called the powerofwhenquiz.com. If you go there, you can do a quiz and find out what you are, thepowerofwhenquiz.com. And I grew up with my parents calling me a sleepyhead.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of bed, sleepyhead. And my mother would tease, Alison was born at 5:19 a.m. and that's the last time she got up that early. But Greg's melatonin would kick in at 8 p.m. and make him sleepy.
Yeah.
My melatonin kicks in at around 6:30 a.m.
Yeah. I've thought actually a lot about this. I'm really excited to explore. Even as a midwife, I could do a 24-hour shift, sometimes a 48-hour shift. And there's something so magical. If I can sleep from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., just those 3 hours, I feel like I've slept 7, even 8. But if I'm awake during those hours, no matter if I've had 10 hours of sleep, I don't feel like I've had sleep. And there must be some genetic link. And I think so often I work with women that are tired. Mm-hmm. And so much of it just goes to, well, like, what is our normal circadian rhythm for us individually?
Yes, that's his work. It's brilliant.
Mm. Cool.
The other thing I would tell you, since we're talking about sex, someone else's work is brilliant. All these people, my partners, are making the world a better place. MissJaya.com, MissJaiya.com. And she's distinguished something called the erotic blueprints. Mm-hmm. And so much of what has women be cattywampus is we don't understand our own sexuality and we don't understand our partner's sexuality, be they male or female. Mm-hmm. And she's identified 5 different erotic blueprints. And if you go to her website, you have to put in your email and then you take this quiz. And I found that it to be so annoying because if you like 2 activities in one category, then you got to pick that category. Even if there's things in the category you would never do, right? So I'm very precise. To me, it was very sloppy.
Okay.
Go through the frustration. It still works.
Okay.
It still works. And I found out that in 26 years of marriage, 28 years together, right? I was imprinted by Greg's erotic blueprint. And that's how I thought men were. So when I went out into the world after he died and encountered men that were different, I was at a loss. Like, what's wrong with me that this man isn't responding to me? Greg would have blank, right?
Right.
Completely different erotic blueprint, completely different stimulus, completely different need, which I had no idea they could be that different. So again, this is all about empowerment, right? The red tent's about empowerment. So understanding men, understanding women is empowering, understanding your circadian rhythm is empowering, understanding your erotic blueprints is empowering.
Yes. And, I've heard the woman's vagina as the Rubik's Cube. I mean, it's like, good luck. Here you go. Figure it out. And everybody's different. And I mentioned men too. Just really quick, because I know we only have a couple minutes left. Sex in the context of providing versus wanting.
Yes.
Would you just touch a little bit on that? I mean, it was so profound for me.
Yeah. We talk about it in the Queen's Code and in Celebrating Partnership. So fiction, nonfiction, we think that we should want to have sex. And thank goodness women have the right to say no when we don't want to have sex. For a very long time, nobody cared whether we wanted to or not. So it's actually a good thing. However, in a partnership, what I would call a delicious sexual partnership, what causes us to want to have sex is too unreliable. Our lifestyles don't cause us to want to have sex. Our communication doesn't cause us to want to have sex. A lot of what we teach in Understanding Women is how to communicate and how for men to listen so that we want to have sex. So there's so many things that add up to we don't want to have sex at the same time with the stars and the moon and the children asleep, right? And so we won't have enough sex to support ourselves individually, and we won't have enough sex to support the union, to keep rebonding the union. And so providing versus wanting is, instead of, limbic, do I want to, right? Prefrontal cortex, I am your sexual partner. I'm your sexual provider. So I'm a yes to having sex, except for during these hours. These are my pumpkin hours. I'm a yes to having sex. And so let's decide to have sex, and then let's do the things that cause me to want to. After I've committed, let's cause me to want to, instead of having wanting to accidentally cause me to commit. Of course we want to. It makes it that much more fun. Right. But first, commit. Okay, 3:00, be there, be square. Okay, now it's 3:00. What do we do? Well, I can think of several things that would have me jump started, that would have me go from 0 to 60. Would now be a good time to do something like that? So jump starts, pumpkin hours, desserts, all these distinctions we make in the Queen's Code and in Celebrity Partnership.
It's beautiful. I love the perspective. Okay, I'm aware you need to go. I just want to say thank you again for your time. For those of you that are curious, I've got links for many of her books. The books of really online workshops turned into books, Audible, and then workshops. It sounds like there's many workshops, but a great place for women to start is Understanding Women.
Yeah, men and women, we recommend starting at Understanding Women. Mm-hmm. Yeah, honor yourself first, or all is lost. Mm-hmm. So the better you understand yourself, the better everybody will be.
Yeah. Any last thoughts that feel incomplete before we finish this that you want to add?
Just thanks. Thanks for making a safe space. And 11 years ago, I took on wrestling the alligator of competition between women, which destroys or prevents what I call the collaboration of queens. And once again, it's our attitude. Do you know, there's enough. There's enough to go around. Men are incredibly generous and capable, and they will protect and provide for, as the way they would put it, anyone within reach. They will protect anyone within reach. And we just don't have to compete with each other for this stuff. And so the perception of scarcity is one of the things that destroys relationships between women and men, and women and men. So with an abundance, a consciousness of abundance, we get to be extraordinary.
Well, I'm so grateful for the abundance that you offer to people around the globe. Women, men, people in relationships, people not in relationships, people just trying to better understand themselves and the other individual humans that they interact with on a daily basis, maybe even the horses that they interact with on a daily basis. I'm just grateful. So thank you so very much for your time.
If you're in the Understanding Men or Understanding Women courses, I answer questions 3 hours a month for the people in those courses. So we'll get to talk. I don't do it in writing. It's too difficult. There's never enough clarity, so I don't attempt it. But if you're engaged in the courses, you get to engage with me.
Very cool. It's my time to engage in a course. All right. Thanks again. And I'm Maraya Brown, an online women's health coach here, interviewing Alison Armstrong, which I'm just so grateful that I had this opportunity, and saying thank you one last time.
Wasn't this episode amazing? Let's distill it down to key takeaways and action steps.
All right, Alison Armstrong, how spectacular was that? What are some of my key takeaways? And a recap to the big nuggets that she landed on our laps. First, how women interact with women, and as well as how we sometimes emasculate our men or disempower one another. The idea of fight, flight, and freeze, and to take a pause and be in a place of self-evaluation. Which one do you do first? So I know for me, I will fight, and then I will flight, and lastly, I will freeze. What about you? I loved what she said about the relationship dynamics between men and women and why we sometimes take things personal. And of course, the conversation around sex and oxytocin. Y'all know I love that stuff. So some things that you might want to do moving forward: go do your sleep chronotype quiz, the erotic blueprint quiz by Jaya Love. That is absolutely worth your time and energy. All the women in the Women's Vibrancy Code do both of those. And you might want to go check out some of her books or workshops. They are well worth your time and energy. Cheers to your healthy relationships. Cheers to better understanding your female brain. And if you are in relationships with men, which of course you are, whether it's at work or you have a son or you have a male-bodied partner, hopefully this was helpful to better understand the dynamics of how we as women interact with men in our lives.
Thank you for listening to the Woman's Vibrancy Code. Connect with us and take the first step to transforming your energy, hormones, and libido at thewomansvibrancycode.com. Cheers to your zest and vitality. Make sure to follow for weekly power-packed value.